So as a preliminary matter, I'm Larry Murphy, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, and I'll be serving tonight as acting chair of the Newbury Planning Board in the absence of our chair, Peter Pecos. So I'd like to start by confirming that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So for planning board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. George Morse,
Yes.
Leslie Matthews,
Yes.
Woody Knight,
Yes.
and Mary Stone.
Yes.
Town staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Martha Taylor,
Here.
Emily Noble,
Here.
town council, if you would identify yourself, Brian Winter from Mead, Tellerman and Costa.
Brian Winter is present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And for anticipated speakers and presenters on the agenda, please respond if you are here. Tom Zarico, Zenco LLC.
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Phil Henry, Civil Design Group LLC.
Also not yet.
Okay. Chris York, Millennium Engineering.
Also not yet.
So far away. Kevin Whitney, K&R Construction.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Kevin. Stephen Sawyer, DCI.
Yes, I'm here.
Vincent Golden, The Cottages Commercial LLC.
I am here.
Attorney Matthew Cooper. No, okay.
He's here. He's muted.
Oh, all right.
My apologies, folks. I'm covering for Ethan for the broadcast.
Oh, sorry. Wrong. Okay. Never mind.
Okay, all right. Joe Stromer, Joe the Architect.
I don't see him here yet.
Austin Drake from Joe the Architect. Michael D'Angelo, Landscape Architecture LLC.
Don't see him yet.
Mark DePiero, DePiero LLC. And I expect he'll be joining us at some point. And Jill Mann from Man and Man PC,
Yeah, I don't see her
also
yet.
not here. I'm
Right.
sure they'll be here in due time.
Right. Tom Zaharico has just arrived.
All right, good. So this is the April 2021 open meeting of the Newbury Planning Board. It's being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newbury Planning Board is convened by video conference via Zoom, as posted on the Planning Board's agenda, which can be found on the town's website, and which identifies how the public may join. You may join by going to http://zoom.us and enter meeting ID 832-7141-3056, or by calling 1-929-205-6099 US, New York in parentheses, and entering the meeting ID number when prompted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and the attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference. Meeting materials were provided to the board members prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak, and if needed, share information to the screen, but please state your intention after you've been called. The ground rules for the meeting are as follows. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, I will cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, For all attendees except board members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using the mute button or your phone *6 to toggle mute unmute when you are not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If board members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. Public comment. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during the public hearings. After board members have spoken, I will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. I will see questions and comments through the Zoom raised hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. A list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on a raised hand button. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the More function next to your name. Telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone keypad. I will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they are listed, which is determined by the order in which people click on the raised hand function. Each participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address and then ask a question or make a comment. I will afford the applicant participant or his or her representative the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. I will then continue down the list of those in the raised hand column and again afford the participant applicant an opportunity to speak. Should there be a physical or electronic submittal of questions or concerns, they will be noted for the record. And again, the participant applicant or representative will be afforded the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not yet been addressed. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right. So our first public hearing is scheduled for 6:45, and we're not quite there yet. We do have one preliminary matter. The others will start at 7:15 and should be dealt with in the order in which they appear in the agenda. This, I think, is for everyone's benefit, including the participants and the general public. We have 4 public hearings for 4 projects scheduled for tonight. Each hearing, we're going to do our best to limit to approximately 30 to 45 minutes max if possible, out of courtesy to all of the applicants, other speakers on the agenda, members of the public in attendance, and the board members. Let's see. So our first agenda item is an A&R for a lot line change between 156 and 184 Middle Road. This A&R, I understand, has previously been endorsed by the board in July of 2020, but the revised plans have been submitted pursuant to request by the land court. So Martha, who is presenting this?
So actually, it's Matt Pullen. So I forgot to put him on the list. I apologize, Matt. And if you would like to unmute yourself and present, I can share the plan.
Great, thank you.
Share if you'd like me to do that.
Please. Hi, everyone. My name's Matt Pullen. I'm the owner of 184 Middle Road. Like Mr. Murphy said, this was approved last June. I am purchasing about 3.5 acres from Russell Mead. It's the back corner of my property. Will not be a buildable lot. It's just being added on to the backfield of my property. I'm back in front of everyone because this is Mr. Mead's property is registered land with the land court, and they made us go in and resurvey the entire property prior to approving the transfer of the lot. So no effective changes have been made. The lot size the same, the the boundary line is the same. It was more of a state related matter that took us about 10 months to figure out. So that's why I'm here.
Can you identify which, or perhaps Martha, you can, I'm not sure
Yeah,
who's controlling the
If you see,
cursor.
Larry, the pond is on my property now.
Yeah.
It's called Lot 2. It's about 3.52 acres. That's just being added on to the back of the property. And then I've got my stone wall runs up the right-hand side, and we just carried the lot line straight across Russell Mead's property right there.
Right,
So
if you can see my cursor here, that's the new boundary. So this is the parcel that's
Lot, the one identified as Lot 2 is the one that's being conveyed, is that correct?
yes, sir. Yep.
All right. Let me ask the planning board members. George, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
No. Leslie?
No, I don't.
Woody?
No, I don't.
And Mary?
No,
No. All right. Well, I have no questions. It seems pretty straightforward. So I would be open to a motion to endorse the revised A&R plan.
So moved. I'll make a
All right, we have
motion to do it.
Motion and a second.
Second,
Was that Woody? Oh, Leslie?
Yep.
All right. Then how do you vote, George?
Yes.
Leslie?
yes.
Woody?
Yes.
And Mary, your opinion?
yes,
And I vote yes, so that's unanimous.
Okay, there is another plan that goes along with it, which is the one which is actually going to get registered in land court. So my understanding is we also need a motion for the board to sign that plan. The land court is insisting that that be signed. So I can share that if you'd like. It's
Anyone? Then why
similar.
don't you put it up, Martha?
Okay, it's similar, but not exactly the same.
I gather any differences are not substantive.
Right. The main difference, well, actually, Matt, I don't know if you want to describe the difference, or I can.
I wasn't aware there is a difference, Martha, so I'll defer to you on that.
All right. The difference is that for the land court plan, all it shows is the actual registered land here, which is kind of following with my cursor. It doesn't show the land at 184 Middle Road to which this parcel is going to be conveyed. Land court only wants to see the part that's actually registered.
All right, very good. Any further questions or discussion, George?
No.
Leslie, any further questions or discussions?
No,
Woody, same question. Anything further?
None.
And Mary, you have
No.
anything? Nor do I. So I would accept the motion to endorse the land court plan.
motion to endorse the land court plan.
All right, thank you, Leslie. And second?
Second.
All right, second by Woody. George, how do you vote on the plan? On the motion, excuse me.
On the motion,
Leslie?
yes.
Thank you. Leslie,
Yes,
Woody,
Yes.
and Mary, your input?
affirmative,
The reason I say that is Mary is not a voting member, but her thoughts are always welcome. Not a voting member on this, at least. And I also vote in the affirmative. So the motion passes unanimously.
Thanks for your time this evening, everyone.
All right, good luck.
So Matt, we will get that signed. The vice chair has the authority to sign A&R plans, so we'll get that signed and I'll let you know as soon as it's ready.
Thanks, Martha. Hopefully the land court will be happy with this version.
Yeah, hopefully
I
so.
appreciate your help. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
does Russell. Thank you very much.
Well, it's almost 6:45, so it's now 6:45 according to my computer. So the next item on the agenda, this is a continued public hearing for 15 Coleman Road for an OSRD special permit and an OSRD open space residential development definitive subdivision plan. These public hearings to be held concurrently. Who's speaking for the applicant? Mr. Zarico, I assume? You're muted, Tom.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, I'll be speaking.
Okay, anything new you'd like to report?
Yeah, a couple of quick items here. First of all, we've had additional meetings with Concom. I think where unless there's changes, again, pending our progress here and in subsequent meeting, unless there's changes, I think we've answered all of their questions and complied with their requests, at least verbally. And we haven't revised plans yet because we want to do that consistently for both boards so that we're all working and looking at the same plan. We also did run the water tests with the help of Byfield Water and our consultant, and the water pressure and flow are fine. I don't need to go into the details of those statistics, but they were fine on all fronts. And the hydrant across from our property, as well as the next hydrant, which is I think the end of the line, were opened and flowed at the same time to make sure that the flow and pressure was sufficient. So those documents, if we haven't submitted them, we'll submit them with other revisions, prior to our next meeting. And other than that, I think the real issue or question or item that needs to be put to rest, hopefully, is the calculation of open space relative to bonus lot eligibility and how that all works out. I know Martha has researched that along with town council, and we've had a little bit of dialogue, and it sounds like it's certainly supportive of what we had said. In fact, again, there's a lot of different ways of calculating these things, but maybe Martha can speak to that, and that way I don't misdirect.
Okay, fair enough. Just to remind everyone, we put a fairly short continuance on this matter. It was last on the agenda 2 weeks ago, and we wanted to get an answer for the applicant as to the correct interpretation of how to calculate the density bonuses. However, I think so. We wanted to refer this to town council, but our planner has looked into this in a little more detail. And anyway, Martha, why don't you go ahead and summarize?
Okay, so I put together a couple of sheets, which I'll share if that's okay.
Please.
If I can find them, hold on. Are you able to see that?
I can see it fine.
Okay. So the first thing I did, there's just a couple of provisions from the OSRD bylaw relative to both the open space requirements and the increases in permissible density. So per the bylaw, a density bonus may be awarded based on a couple of criteria. One is for each additional 10% of the site over and above the required 50% of the contiguous up. Well, let me back up actually. The open space OSRD requires that a minimum of 50% of the upland shown on the development plan shall be set aside as open space, and that this open space shall be contiguous. Paragraph 11 states that for each additional 10% over and above that required.
Talking about the Coleman Road old bonus requirements right now.
Yes.
Oh, I think someone is not
Yeah,
muted.
that was Steve. I think I'm muting him. So, so for each additional 10% of that contiguous open space over and above the required 50% that's set aside as open space, a bonus of 1 additional unit or 5% of the basic maximum number, whichever is greater, may be awarded. So in this case, the yield plan, if you all recall, was for 5 units. The total lot area is 31.69 acres. The total contiguous upland, based on the information on the drawings, is 25.18 acres. So the required amount of open space is 50% of that contiguous upland. So 50% of 25.18 acres equals 12.59 acres. Density bonus for one unit would be 10% above that, or 60% times 25.18 acres equals 15.11 acres. And for two bonus units, it would be 70% or 20% above the 50% of 25.18 acres equaling 17.63 acres. The applicant is actually setting aside 20.67 acres of contiguous upland as open space. However, per the bylaw, the maximum density bonus is 50% of the maximum number from the yield plan rounded down. So that would be half of 5, which is 2.5 rounded down is 2. The other way of calculating it is 5% of the maximum basic number. So that would be 5% of 5 units, which is 0.25 units, but the OSRD bylaw says that it's whichever is greater. So that brings us to the 2. Did that make sense?
Yes, I think so. For those of us who are math challenged, Martha, you're satisfied that this qualifies for two bonus density units?
Yes, it's eligible for 2 density.
Eligible, I'm sorry, eligible. Okay. Let me turn to the board members then and see if you have any questions on what's been presented so far. George, any questions or comments?
Oops, shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
George, you're muted.
The answer is no.
Leslie, any questions or comments on what has been presented so far?
None.
No. Woody, how about you?
No, I don't have any comments.
And Mary?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Before I open up to the public for any questions, I just want to make an observation that a qualification for the density bonuses, of course, Tom, doesn't mean it's automatic. So when we get further into discussion on the requirements of the bylaw, you're going to, need to support why, a density bonus of 1 or 2 lots is consistent with the intent of the bylaw and the requirements of the bylaw. So why don't we open it to the public now as to whether or not there are any questions regarding what's been presented so far this evening. Anything, Martha?
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay.
And I'm looking around, I'm not seeing anybody physically raising their hand.
Okay. Martha, do you have any written correspondence or comments?
There's one email from Derek Estella.
And can you summarize that?
Basically, we wanted to have a further conversation, which he and I have not been able to have. Yes,
Okay.
additional questions.
All right. Right now, I'm frankly, I just want to kind of get a sense from the board where you want to go with this now. Unfortunately, we're hampered by the lack of a full panel, in that our chair, Peter Pecos, is not with us this evening. We could, begin a further review, but more in-depth review, but it's probably just ground we'll have to go over again once we have a full panel. What's your feeling, George? Ought we to go forward with some further review this evening, or wait until we have Peter back with us?
Did you ask George or Woody?
I did, George. I'm sorry. I probably dropped my voice. I'm
That's
just not sure how we want to proceed as a group in Peter's absence.
Well, if this is on the issue of the bonus lot, Martha, are your numbers satisfactory to you? I have trouble understanding them all for a bonus lot, or is it on the edge?
No, they have more than enough contiguous uplands set aside as open space.
Okay. But it's only for one, not two.
No, it is for two. They actually have, if there weren't a limitation on the number because of the number of units on the yield plan, they would actually be eligible for more, but they're capped at two.
Okay, all right. If they want a bonus lot or two, I would be in favor of it, if that's the issue.
Well, it certainly is an issue, but that's not the one I posed, George. The question is, do we want to go into a more in-depth review of the requirements of the bylaw at this point in the absence of Peter? Recognizing that we will probably have to, when we have a full panel, we'll probably have to revisit these issues.
Yes, I think Peter would probably be helpful in being included in the discussion. I know he's had a lot of effort on it and a lot of study, which he'd be able to pass on, and I think that would help.
All right, so would you be, and I'm asking the question in a very clumsy way. Do you think we need to continue this now as
Yes.
opposed to have further?
If we want Peter here, yes, we have to continue.
And Leslie, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think a full quorum needs to be present in order for us to move forward so that we are all on the same page at the same time.
And Woody?
I
Same
agree
question.
also. I agree also.
And Mary, what are your thoughts?
I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of your comments. I think we would simply have to rehash these issues again if we started on a more in-depth examination now.
Larry, could I speak to that a little bit?
Sure,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Obviously, I'm sure you all know that we deferred to this meeting to get the information that Martha's been able to get in terms of the calculation. And I completely understand the value of Peter's. He's been very engaged with this property and with this application. And I in a perfect world, I'd like to have him here too, but I'm sort of curious. I've been in front of a lot of boards over a lot of years. And if somebody's missing next time, then are we just kicking this further down the road? I'm concerned about that because I don't think we have a lot of, insurmountable issues, but we really can't, as an applicant, I can't really realistically even make headway on answering some of the other questions if we don't have some direction or some some kind of a strong idea of where we're headed with this. So I'm just curious. I mean, is this something that everybody feels needs to have everybody for, and what's the chance that may happen again next meeting?
Well, I think the point is that before this went to a vote, I mean, we certainly wouldn't go to a vote, and I doubt that you would want to go to a vote with only four members because you would need a unanimous vote. But I think the point is that we would have to repeat much of the same analysis. Martha, your thoughts on this? Is there any way you think we can meaningfully go forward with anything tonight? My inclination is no, but don't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry.
I mean, certainly, I think before giving any sort of substantive direction, having the chair's input will be important. I suppose one possibility might be to, briefly go over the criteria to kind of set the stage for that discussion.
Well, we do have a little time to kill before the next public hearing. Do we want to maybe go over if you can call up the purpose and intent section of the OSRD and just take a look at that?
I could do that, and that might help with the discussion of the bonus units as well. Phil Henry, the engineer, has his hand raised. Would you like to recognize him?
Sure.
Hi, Phil.
Thank you, Martha. I guess I'd just like to add, at last meeting, we went through both the primary and secondary objectives of the OSRD. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we discussed collectively satisfying all of them except for the bonus portion. And if you like, as part of my response letter, I outlined all of the primary objectives and we responded in writing how we met those objectives, which I think was part of which we reviewed last hearing. So I think from our perspective, for what it's worth, this was the only thing that was left to proceed with finalizing the plans.
Well,
Thank you.
then I guess your memory is better than mine of the last meeting, but it sounds, Tom, it sounds like we've given you some direction already.
Yeah, well, in fact, I think we did go through that. Phil is correct. I mean, there's 11, I think, Martha, check me if I'm wrong, there's 6 primary objectives and there's 5 secondary objectives or vice versa. And we actually quite substantially satisfy 10 out of the 11. The only one we haven't I guess complied with, and you don't have to comply with them all. You're supposed to try to comply with as many as you can, is affordable housing. I mean, we, on the other hand, we're substantially beyond expectation with most of the other goals of the OSRD. Those are the things that we discussed last time. And again, I'm not sure, Martha, do you have anything differently on that?
No, I don't think so. I can certainly pull them up again if the board would like to see them.
And Larry, if I could, I mean, I feel uncomfortable that I feel like I'm trying to push the board to do something that you're not comfortable with, and I don't like to do that. You know, I feel for the position of the board very much. I a little bit frustrated myself in terms of trying to make progress, but you know, again, I think it's a balancing act here for you and for me. And I don't want to push you to the point where you're uncomfortable, but I really do want to try to make progress. These are not easy times in any business. And you know, we want to get moving ahead. If we're going to move ahead, we want to get moving ahead.
Can I say something?
Of course, Mary.
Larry?
Yes.
Tom, I totally understand what you're saying, and I feel the urgency that you have to get this done. I think it's really important to note that Pete has drilled down on this tremendously. He's very engaged and invested in it. He wants it to go well. And I personally feel as a board member that his input in this process, which is arduous, it's tough, I know, is very important at this point, and that for us to proceed seems to be inefficient.
I understand. I appreciate that through the chair. I guess if that certainly appears to be the general feeling, and I understand Peter's significance here for sure. I guess if I could ask, then, if we're going to continue this, hopefully to the May 5th meeting, that if we could plan time so that we can make progress on the other issues, so we don't have to. We've gone through outside review, we've gone through Concom, we've kind of done all the other things that we can do. I'd like to make sure that at the next meeting, presuming that we have a meeting of the minds in terms of the density and all, that we're prepared to work through some of the waivers and other things at that time, so that we can, move along towards conclusion, if that's not too much to ask.
No, and I'm very sympathetic to, to your situation of any developer. You want to move these things along, and just the nature of the thing is that it doesn't always go as quickly as we'd all like, including the board, believe it or not.
No, I know.
But as far as your concern about another absence, the absence of another member, anything can happen for sure. But this board has a pretty good history of perfect attendance, for lack of a better term. This was just a very unusual situation that Pete wasn't available. And I really am suggesting that we continue this with the idea that it's not really going to delay you at all, because I can see at the next meeting, hopefully doing exactly as you suggest. But I think if we do it tonight, we're just wasting time tonight. Well, not wasting, but we're burning time tonight, and as Mary would put it, a less efficient manner. And I really do. And to be quite blunt, I put a lot of stock in what our chairman has to say, and I welcome the idea of hearing his ideas and sharing ideas with him. So that said, it's easy for me to say to him, but I don't think this is going to set you back anything significantly.
I appreciate the sentiment. I think that you sincerely do understand, and I value Peter as well. So again,
let me ask you this. We got a few minutes to go before the next public hearing. What questions would you want answered tonight that you don't already have?
Well, we have a list of waivers that are not too atypical of what's been waived before. Things like right of way width, cul-de-sac diameter, not the traveled path, but the right of way portion of it. Phil, maybe check me if I'm wrong, but I think those are kind of primary in our waiver requests.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and I think in particular, when you're talking about those dimensional waivers too, and I'm just going to share a thought with you here. You're also expecting, I think, that this way be accepted as a public way. Is that also correct?
Yes, that's correct. And Larry, I do understand the process. It's interesting. I understand that the board, even if considering making that recommendation, it's not a guarantee. I do get that. I've been through that in other communities. All of the roadways that we've built in our 30 or 35 years of doing this have been taken over by the municipalities through that same process, through the town meeting process with consent of the selectmen and recommendation of the board. So, and again, I think that's something that I understand all sides of that dialogue, but I think we're talking about an open space here that I think there's a disconnect between a private road and access to a very public piece of open space, and the parking thing we can deal with if we have to deal with. We can find spots for those in the cul-de-sac. It's a big island. That's not, I don't think, insurmountable. It's really a question of, should it be public or should it be private? And because of those reasons. So that's the other waiver. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the next few minutes just to respond. Where I was really going with this is, well, first of all, this board, at least in recent history, has not had, I don't think we've ever recommended a short cul-de-sac being accepted as a public way. And when you're reducing the dimensions of the roadway, it makes it that much harder for DPW to maintain. So there's a bit of an inconsistent one. I don't know if inconsistency is the right term, but if you're asking to reduce the dimensions and at the same time for the town to take it over, we got to think about things like that. And I offer it just as food for thought. Okay. but those are the things that I would expect would have a discussion on next time, as long as, once again, the bonus lots. So that said, we got another 5 minutes. Anything else you want to discuss?
Actually, I have one question with relation to Joe's comments, which I apologize again, you received after the last session of the hearing. Did you have any responses to those comments that you wanted to review with the board tonight?
Phil, can I, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we were all set. Like I mentioned, we did provide responses, and then he replied responses to our responses. So, we're prepared to incorporate the changes that we've committed to in the final plan set. Obviously, a lot of those changes are insubstantial relative to the bigger questions that we still have with regards to number of units and waivers, because those things will certainly shape the final plan set.
Okay, but you have no issues or questions about his most recent review letter?
I don't think so. I think most of his, unless I'm missing something, unless you think I should be paying attention to a particular item, I think he basically just repeated what we had indicated. So, but by all means, if there's something that you'd like me to focus in on, please let me know.
I will, yeah.
Okay.
All right, let me go through the poll of board members to see if there's any further questions or comments based on this discussion. George, anything more?
I have nothing.
No. Leslie?
Nothing.
Woody?
No, I have nothing now. I am interested though to see the hydrant test, but other than
Okay,
that, no.
good. And Mary?
No comments or questions.
Okay. Martha, do you have a recommended continuance date?
I know Tom has just requested the 5th, so let me pull up
Yeah, I
our,
don't know what we have on for that date.
I think right now, the only thing we have is the, actually, we've got 217 and 221 High Road, and, can you not see it?
No,
Yeah.
I can't see it.
No, I don't see it.
Okay, hold on a sec. Well, I thought I had this solved. Let me try this again. See it now?
Yes.
Okay. So on May 5th, we have 3 Newburyport Turnpike, and that will be a review of the decision. The one remaining issue with that really is kind of the architectural. And also 217, 221 High Road. And I think the major remaining issue on that really is the stormwater. We're having a technical meeting tomorrow with Bill Holt and Joe. So those are the 2 on the agenda for that night. And
Are you comfortable with May 5th then for the continuance on this?
I think so. I think 3 Newburyport Turnpike shouldn't, well, famous last words, but yes. I think those are both continued to 7:15. I don't know if the board would want to consider, an earlier meeting again.
Well, the problem, if we do an earlier meeting, frankly, is I feel a lot of pressure to complete it by 7:15, and I'm not sure that that's giving this applicant enough time.
And the board, at 7:15, the board could acknowledge that there are other public hearings scheduled and say that they will start once this, this business has been concluded, but that would be obviously up to the chair.
Okay. George, what do you think? May 5th?
Early meetings start then, and I think I would encourage the chair to move forward, to keep it running until it's done. Because
Okay,
it should
Leslie?
be a really short meeting in that decision
Oh.
issue.
Early start's good. Were you thinking the same kind of start that we did tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Woody, how about you?
In fairness to the applicant, and Peter's asked us tonight, I think it would, if we started early and and if it went a little past 7:15, so be it, if that's all right with the chair. May 5th would be good.
And Mary.
Early start, all good.
So it strikes me I've done this exactly backwards. We should have asked for a motion and then had a discussion. But
Yes.
we had the discussion, now I'll ask for the motion.
Motion to continue.
To May 5th at 7:15 PM.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry, 6:30.
6:30, yeah.
6:30 or 6:40? Well,
6:45?
and we could start it,
6:30.
we could start it right at 6:30 if you wanted.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll give him time.
Right.
That's
All right.
good.
And I know that there is a proposed A and R that someone wants to submit, but that could come afterwards.
All right, so the motion on the floor, I believe, is to continue the public hearing to May 5th at 6:30 PM.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, and roll call vote, George, yes, yea or nay?
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Woody,
yes.
and Mary, your thoughts?
May 5.
And
good.
I vote yes, so it's unanimous.
Okay.
All right,
Okay, well, thank you folks very much for the time and consideration tonight.
thank you, we appreciate your
Tom, thank you
cooperation.
for your patience. Thank you.
Okay,
I
you're
need
welcome.
your
We'll
help
see you.
here.
We'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right, we ready to move on? Is it
7:17.
7:17? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the continued public hearing for 84 Boston Road site plan review. So we'll open that hearing and I'll ask the applicant or his representative if they have any new information and materials to present.
Good evening.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
We submitted a new set of architectural drawings last week. I dropped those off with Martha late last week, some hard copies and electronic copies. That's the only new material from the last hearing. Site plans are all the same.
Okay, we're actually, we asked our last meeting, asked our town planner to prepare a draft decision on this. And I know Martha was working late last night to get that completed. And I got a copy of it then. I just wonder if the board members, if you feel that you've had an opportunity to review that and if we're ready to go forward with a review of that draft decision. George, are you?
Yeah, I did not have an opportunity to review it completely.
Okay. Leslie, how about you?
I'm about halfway through it.
Okay. Woody?
I skimmed through it in the 5 o'clock hour. I got the
Okay.
email today.
And Mary, have you had an
I've not had
opportunity?
time to complete it, honestly.
You have or have not?
Have not.
Oh, okay. And how about the applicant, Chris? Have you had a chance to look at the, or someone from your team had a chance to look at the decision? In particular, the conditions?
Yeah, I read through it a little bit this afternoon. I didn't see anything there that was troubling or anything, but I'll let Kevin speak to it as well if he's read it.
I did review. I only had a couple items. The largest item was the operating hours and access to the site. It said it would be limited to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I would just ask that to be modified to be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Quite often, a typical day for construction work is 7 to 3:30. So we would have to say pick a truck up or pick a trailer up at more like say 6:30 in the morning or 6:15 to be on the job site for 7. And then say we left a job site at 4, with traffic or whatnot, you might not arrive back to the office, the shop there until after 5, could be 5:30. So I would just ask that to be slightly modified to be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it says Monday through Friday. I don't know if that's a boilerplate that goes on all draft decisions. I would just ask that to be made to 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. I go into the office occasionally on Saturday mornings, might go in, wash a couple trucks on Saturday morning. I don't see it being a major issue in that area. The transfer station's open on Saturdays as well. It's not like there'd be a major trucking thing going on or anything like that, but we are in and out on Saturday mornings occasionally. And then we do occasionally do emergency utility repairs. Like the town of Topsfield, we do a lot of emergency water main breaks for them. So we could be going there occasionally. It happens once or twice a year, maybe, where we have to go get a truck in the middle of the night if they happen to call. And we could be in and out for snowstorms as well. The only other item that caught my eye was the $1,000 for the tree fund. I just didn't know if that's a typical thing that the town puts on all new projects. I had never heard of that before.
Well, I think that was prompted by concern over you're basically clear cutting the lot. You're taking down an awful lot of trees. Let me step back a little bit. George, are you comfortable with a further review of the decision tonight, or do you want to hold off on that until you've had an opportunity to review it in
I
more
would like
depth?
to read the whole thing.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to see the whole thing.
Okay. Leslie, how about you?
I'd like to be able to get through the whole thing before I make a definitive decision.
Okay. Woody?
I got through most of it, but I like to read things twice, and I saw what the applicant has brought up just now, and I think that everybody should have a chance to go through this and then.
Okay, and Mary, how about your thoughts? Did we lose Mary?
No, Mary's muted.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I agree with Woody.
You know what I would
time.
suggest, Kevin and Chris, why don't you put your thoughts on the things that you've just highlighted, put it in writing and submit it to Martha. And
Yeah.
I think, and I'm sorry, I know you're anxious like everybody else is to get this done and would love to do it, but the combination of getting the decision so late, and that's just the way, I know Martha did her level best to get it to us as soon as she could, but she's a very busy lady. And, the decision, the combination of just now seeing the decision and the absence of the chair, I think the best thing to do would be to continue this for further review. And if you can give us your thoughts in writing, I think that would be a huge help. And we should be able to get through this thing and hopefully wrap it up the next session.
Okay, yeah, I agree. We're really close, it seems like. I'm getting excited. We're so close here now.
Good. All right.
I have no problem putting in writing. There's just a couple items, like I said. Is there any possibility I can get on your next meeting? Just so I can, hopefully move forward as soon as possible.
That's May 5th again. And so seems to be filling up. Martha, what do you think? 3 public hearings in one night is probably as much as we want to do.
Shall I pull up the schedule again?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I would, if I may, just say one thing regarding the operating hours. What's written in the decision is what was in the material that was presented to us with the original application package. It was, precisely, Monday through Friday. And I think we did have some discussion at some point about whether there would be other operations for snow removal and, emergencies or something like that. So, all I'm saying is that the information that's in there is what we were given and what had been discussed earlier. So,
Okay, it could be a miscalculation on my part. I may have simply said the hours we work and I wasn't thinking about reporting to the office, half an hour before to go to the work. My bad on that end. Seems like it should be a minor issue.
all right, well, I will pull up the schedule again.
So May 5th, we've already got 3 public hearings now. I think if I would be inclined to think the 19th would be the better date. But
Okay, if it has to be, that should give everyone plenty of time, I guess, to review.
I think so. And again, yeah, if we have plenty of time to review it and get your comments in writing, I find it extremely helpful because then we know what to anticipate. I think we can be much more efficient in the use of our time. So I'd entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until May 19th at what, 7:15? Do we want to do earlier?
7:15.
7:15. Is that a motion, Woody?
Yes, we don't have anything on the plate for the 19th, so 7:15, May 19th, continuation.
Okay.
Motion.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, George?
None.
Any discussion, Leslie?
No.
Any discussion, Woody?
No.
Any discussion, Mary?
No.
And I have nothing. So, George, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Leslie, on the motion?
Yes.
Woody?
Yes.
And Mary, your thoughts?
19th it is.
All right, and I vote yes as well, so it's unanimous. Thank you, and once again, appreciate your cooperation, and I think we're very close to getting this wrapped up, and hopefully we'll
Okay.
do
Thank
it
you.
sooner rather
Thanks.
than later. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for 2 and 8R Old Point Road Site Plan Review. So I'll ask the applicant if there's anything new you want to present to the board tonight.
Good evening, Steve Sawyer here with Vincent Code and Steve Sawyer with DCI. No, we submitted everything at the last meeting back in, I believe it was March 27th. And at that time, I think it was direction that I guess Martha would be drafting the decision. So I think at that time, at that meeting, we were here. I think this meeting was scheduled to review the decision, I believe, in a vote.
Yeah, have you seen the decision?
Yeah, Vincent and I got it.
Yes, we're fine with it in its current condition. We sent a couple little things Martha needed just clarification on, but we're good with it.
Right. Well, we're in the same situation we were with the previous hearing. I only received the decision this afternoon, have not had an opportunity to review it. George, how about you?
I had the same problem. I couldn't eat dinner and read it at the same time, so I would like to, but I'm not ready to deal with it.
Okay, Leslie?
Same thing.
Yeah,
Didn't have
Woody?
the time.
I got through that one, but that was because it was in the day before, but I'd like to read it again.
Okay, and Mary?
Yeah, I need more time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the same boat we were for the last, a combination of not having had an opportunity to thoroughly review the decision and missing, one member, the chairman. I would be, don't know that it's would be fruitful to go to do any further review at this point. Martha, leaving aside the review of the decision, do we have any other open business with this application?
There was one thing, and I know that Vince responded to me in an email right before this, and I didn't have a chance to ask. I was reviewing, in preparing the decision, I was reviewing the ZBA decision. And there was one condition that was placed on it regarding the house that's at 8R Old Point that straddles the property line, to essentially set aside a reserve area, you know, totally within the parcel so that that building could be moved and meet all the applicable setback requirements, dimensional requirements, without impacting anything that's required for the restaurant operation. So, Vince, I know you responded and I haven't had a chance to read that.
Yeah, so the area that is shown where the building is going to go is the parking field as well, because the existing structure can't actually physically be moved. If it were to move, it would have to get demolished and rebuilt, and in which case it would go on pilings, and parking would like most new construction on the island, parking would go under what would be the first living floor.
Okay, so you're saying that it's within that sort of area where the house is now that's separated by the fence from the parking lot.
Correct.
And the 2 required parking spaces would be underneath.
Correct. That was what was mentioned at the time as well when we had that discussion, and they understood that the existing house is cinder block, sits on a slab, so it is not movable or raisable. So it would actually, if for any reason it was ever moved, it would have to get demolished and then reconstructed on pilings, which would leave plenty of space for the parking.
Okay, and you can still meet the setback requirements.
Yes, in the decision with the ZBA, there was a site plan that should have been filed that showed the area of where the setbacks, showing that we meet the setbacks and there was enough area to put the structure.
Okay, thank you.
Martha, I'm having or Vincent, either one of you, I'm having a hard time visualizing this. Is it possible to pull up the plan?
Would you want me to share?
Yeah, let me make you a co-host, Steve.
What's that?
No, we're not saying anything yet.
You good?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Larry, so this is the existing structure, and we have parking here.
Mhm.
So this building would get up and slid to the left on piles, and the parking would be simply still at the same location, but underneath.
Oh, all right. So then, but the building would still be on the site, the same site?
Yeah, it would be on. Yeah, it would be in this area here, and the parking, instead of being next to it, would be underneath it.
Okay.
Correct. The ZBA just wanted to make sure that we left enough space so that if something were to ever happen to the existing building, that there was enough space on site to fix the encroachment that exists on my adjacent property.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let me turn to the board members. George, anything?
Could
Any
I?
questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted, I mean, I've listened through the last few and I don't want to necessarily reiterate all of the other things, but I was definitely under the impression that a draft would have been circulated in time for this meeting, and I'd love to continue to go through it as you know, if this has to get pushed to the 19th as an example, I have the selectmen waiting to see the final plan to vote on the liquor license, and so therefore that's going to push me into the end of May, potentially even early June, which will then require up to 5 weeks with the ABCC to get my liquor license, which now is putting me into maybe a late July opening, which essentially means there is no restaurant this summer because of this delay. And we're in, I don't want to put the board in this situation, but we're at the point now where it's either a no or a go or no go for this summer. And I'd hate to leave those buildings in the condition that they're at and not have this go forward because of I think the decision is a pretty straightforward. The conditions seem very reasonable, and I would love the opportunity to try and go through this. I know Peter had already given his thoughts on the conditions the last meeting, and those were incorporated into Martha's draft.
When are you going before the selectmen?
I'm supposed to go again. I was there a couple weeks ago, and then they wanted to do a site tour. They did a site tour yesterday, and then there was a meeting subsequent to that, in which case there was really two larger issues still outstanding. One, they really want to understand that the site plan that was before them was what they were voting on. And the second one was some clarification from town council on just some liquor law related items. So this getting delayed pushes potentially back the others and now I'm done for the summer.
No, but when are you next?
Oh, I'm sorry. Next week.
Next
week.
29th, next Thursday.
29th.
29th.
Oh, okay. Martha, any thoughts?
And a couple of thoughts. I don't know how the board feels, and obviously that should be discussed, but at this point, I think that the plan seems to be pretty well set. I know that the issues that have been brought up, it's all been brought within the property line. The issues that were brought up by DEP have been addressed. Some of the concerns that the select board had to do with sort of operational concerns and the fencing around the property. They wanted to make sure that people can't leave the site with alcohol and things like that. So the select board wanted to make sure that what is approved, like the sand berm with the 3-foot high snow fence on it, that the planning board is in concurrence that's okay, and the 6-foot high fencing along the edge of the parking lot. So I guess one thought I have is if the board, might give some assurance that the plan as it is acceptable, because some of the conditions really have to do the board went through the findings, and I think those are what's been written is in concert with what was discussed. So it's really the conditions, and some of them are really more operational than substantive in terms of plan changes.
I just say it's very difficult to put the board in a position to review and vote on a plan that we really haven't seen. And it's no one's fault. It's just is what it is. George, what are your thoughts on all of this?
If we could have all the material in front of us for enough time to review it, I would even consider an earlier meeting. I don't know whether that would be possible, Martha. A special.
And that could certainly be considered, next week potentially, although I know that the chair may still not be available at that point.
Well, I understand the applicant's time constraints, and I would like to work with those if we can.
Understood.
At that point, the chairman could make contact from wherever he is, be a participant. Just a thought.
Well, that's, unlike that's a thought, George. I mean, we could always get any comments he had in writing to be entered into the record. I do want to work with you on this, Vincent. I think we're all impressed with this. Well, I'm speaking for myself, but I suspect for the board too, that we're all very impressed with this project and want to see it go forward. Leslie, how about you? What do you think?
I'm pretty happy with everything that, all of the information that we've given so far is very good. From what I understand, there will be people to watch in and out, that there's no alcohol that leaves the facility. But having said that, I think everybody needs to understand that anybody who is dealing with, let's say, just say COVID at this moment in time, are dealing with the same circumstances. So the Plum Island Grill and the Beachcomber and everybody else, they're all under the same situation. And they were last summer, and everything seemed to go smoothly. So I think everything will go smoothly here as well.
Yeah, no, but would you be in favor of an earlier meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Woody, how about you?
Yes, we could do an earlier meeting, and I would like to see this go forward. That summer's knocking on our door. So, and I know from what I read of the draft, there was noise hours of operation were concerned, and the select board was concerned with it as well. So,
All right, and Mary, what are your thoughts?
I believe from the very beginning that the team putting this project together is trying extremely hard to accommodate all of our, our opinions and the needs of the town. And we should do anything and everything, including an earlier meeting, to get them up and running for the summer.
All right. Well, let me suggest then, and see if, and I'm sorry, you said you're seeing the selectmen on the 29th.
The 29th. Thursday.
So I don't have a calendar. I'm sorry, when is that?
That's next Thursday. So
Unfortunately, we got town meeting on Tuesday.
No, Tuesday. So
Yeah, that's what I said.
right, so that would leave potentially Wednesday to have an extra meeting, which would be before the select board meeting on the liquor license.
I'm good with that. I'm on the wrong date here.
So that would be,
You want to do something like maybe 6 p.m. on Wednesday, 6:30, that Wednesday? I mean, we just need, a couple of days to review the decision. And Pete can submit anything he has in writing, as I said, if he's not back.
so 6:30 p.m. on the 28th.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
I'll be in Boston, but I can phone in.
Well, you want to do it a little later, Mary?
I'm sorry,
You want to do it a little later, or?
like 7? I mean, it's not going to take long, right?
I think half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, 7 would be good. Is that okay with everybody else?
be-
I don't want to be the only one.
Before I ask for a motion on this, why don't we open it to the public, see if there are any members of the public that have anything to add? You see any raised hands, Martha?
Yes, I do. Steve Mangin has raised his hand. And Steve, you'll need to unmute yourself, please.
There we go. Thank you for the chance to comment. I find myself a little bit confused about how the public comments have been addressed. Certainly, I haven't seen the draft decision document either, and I would like to see it to be able to provide comments. But as I recall, there were outstanding issues about, again, considering this is a residential area, issues about traffic have been raised since, though there may be a fine manual out there that has to do with traffic implications, people have talked about the need for a site-specific study to see how we're accounting for the fact that we've got a Plum Island Grill across the street we've got a wildlife refuge, we've got a parking lot further down the road, and just what the traffic impacts are going to be on a site-specific basis. I know Martha's been looking into some of the information provided by the applicant, but certainly I haven't seen it yet. Other commenters haven't seen it, and we're still concerned about the traffic impacts and what studies we're relying upon to make a decision. Lighting seemed to become an issue at the planning board decision document regarding the golf center. And again, I would think in this residential area, which is much more densely populated than the golf center, lighting could be an important issue. And again, that's something I'd be looking at in terms of what the draft decision document is all about. As I recall, nighttime lighting hasn't been allowed at the golf center. And perhaps, I'm not saying it should not be allowed, but it really needs to be talked about a lot more than I've heard, given the implications of the golf center. And finally, I think I heard at the selectmen's meeting that the Board of Health had weighed in being okay with the porta potties. I would like to know if, just as a matter of good practice, whether we've got it in writing and what was agreed to. As a resident on the island, I'm not a fan of more porta potties at this location, particularly for a restaurant, even if there is a small outdoor sink that's going to be provided. And I think I've made this comment before that there are other options for bathrooms. Some of them are rollaway bathrooms, which in the event of a storm, which would cause not only the mobile restaurant to need to be moved, you'd be able to roll away the portable bathroom as well. And the porta potties would present another unique challenge if the storm was warranting removal of infrastructure. And finally, I guess we're still left with the issue of hours, but as I understand it, that's an issue for the select board, as is the serving of alcohol in the outdoor venue, an issue for the select board and the ABCC, or forgive my use of the acronyms. And again, so I just loop back to saying we're in a dense residential area, and I look forward to reading the draft document ahead of the board's next meeting, the planning board's next meeting, if that's possible. So I guess my last question is, can that document be made available to other people that have been commenting about this project through time? And with that, I'll close. Thank you.
Martha, we can get the draft decision up on the website, can we not? If it's not already there.
It's not there. Quite honestly, we don't usually distribute that to the public ahead of time.
Well, we have a request for it, and it is a public document, so I think we need to make it available in some fashion, either on request or by getting it up on the website.
Okay.
Okay. Brian, Mr. Winter, I'm going to put you on the spot. We haven't heard from you tonight. Do you agree that that this ought to be made public?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, it is a public document at this point in any event. So if anyone were to request it, they'd be entitled to receive it. So there's no problem, making it available in that manner.
All right. And then, of course, the public, can attend the next meeting.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. So I believe the discussion was to continue this to the 28th at 7 p.m. Do I have that right?
Larry, may I ask the applicant a quick question?
Of course, anything you want.
Thank you. On Saturday, I noticed that you were doing cutting the floor in the garage down there. I was just wondering, so you have received a permit, a building permit?
It's a partial permit to start on some of that work. We were given the okay by Peter, the building inspector, that doing work inside, because it is zoned for the restaurant were at risk, but would allow us to, he was comfortable allowing us to start stuff. I believe the permit is posted on the window if you went by there. So that's where things are at now. We're supposed to be demoing the buildings on Friday, and I got to figure out if that's still happening, but that was the plan as of now.
Okay, thanks a lot. That's all.
Okay. We ready for a motion to continue?
Motion to continue this matter till Wednesday, April 28th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Okay, George, any discussion?
None.
Leslie, any discussion?
No?
Woody, any discussion?
No.
And Mary, any discussion? George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Leslie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mary, your thoughts?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it's unanimous. We'll continue it and hopefully we can keep you on track.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, our last public hearing this evening is continued public hearing, open space residential development, special permit for 105 High Road, map R48, lot 49, applicant DePiero LLC, owner Mitchell Manton, and continued from March 17th, 2021. Mr. DePiero, I see, is with us as his attorney man. Would either of you like to address the board?
Good evening. Jill Mann here on behalf of DePiero LLC, the applicant in connection with this OSRD. I've obviously heard all of the comments relative to the other petitioners in the absence of Mr. Pecos relative to those discussions. So I am assuming, maybe incorrectly or correctly, that the board is going to also want to continue any kind of constructive and or detailed discussion. But before we actually were to do that or take those types of comments, I would like to make just a couple of procedural issues. Consistently throughout the process, I've made it pretty clear that this is going to be a condominium. There is not going to be a subdivision plan submitted, but I know that there have been some references to waivers in the subdivision rules and regulations in our own documents by our own engineer, and then by comments from the peer reviewer, Mr. Sawatka, and in addition by the town planner. But this is not a subdivision. There are no requirements for waivers other than from the rules and regulations that would pertain to site plan approval, which are all contained within 97 and 112. So I guess I'm just getting distracted. I guess that we did want to make certain that the board understood that distinction and maybe even ask Attorney Winter to speak to it, because I said in my communication sent over on April 7th, if we need a waiver, we'll request it. For example, there's some continued and ongoing disagreement relative to open space and how in fact you categorize it or what it is. In terms of contiguous nature and those provisions. That was the waiver of which I was speaking, but it's simply a driveway, and it's important that there be, a common ownership relative to condominium because of Title V, because of all other kinds of applications that pertain to condominiums. So, Mr. Murphy, I know that at this point you are the chair this evening, so I guess I'm looking for some direction relative to that, and then some potential discussion just to confirm that the board understands what we actually are going for. Because again, I know that we've created confusion as well.
Well, I think that it's pretty clear to the board that this is a condominium. It's not always been clear to us, to be honest with you, but
I get it.
It's very clear, I think, in the current iteration And I can't off the top of my head tell you what waivers may or may not be needed. And there may be some waivers from the OSRD rules and regulations. And one point of discussion that you just mentioned was the issue that we've been wrestling with for a long time is the contiguous open space issue. And I would point out that that can be waived, certainly, so that, regardless of how we ultimately view that issue, and I understand your position on it, there is a path forward for you on that, regardless of the position that we take. And I'm not quite sure what else you might be referring to, frankly.
With regard to the waiver, because in Mr. Sawaka's comments and then in Ms. Taylor's comments, they're saying we need waivers from, width of road, dimensions of cul-de-sacs. You don't, because you're not in subdivision. You need to meet all of the requirements of the fire department, so it's via site plan. So you need to meet requirements that make it safe for travel, but you don't seek waivers from subdivision control because it's inapplicable. So that's what I mean. It's just, there's a lot of odd overlap, but I couldn't agree more, Mr. Murphy, that we may in fact need a waiver from, in my opinion, one of the OSRD regulations, which is the open space, to the extent the board does not accept my definition, which it doesn't have to accept. My explanation also of contiguous. And that to me is the only real waiver that we would be required to seek, as far as I can see. Because there really aren't any set design standards with regard to the OSRD that we aren't complying with. For example, the 20-foot separation, the 20-foot distance, the frontage requirement of 50 feet, we comply with all of those.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
If I may, one thing, and I think Attorney Mann alluded to this, there were some waiver requests in the most recent submission, which were from the rules and regs. And so the thinking was, if those waivers were being requested, then other ones should also reasonably be requested. So that's where that came from.
And I agree, and I apologize for the confusion, Ms. Taylor. I recognize that is in our camp. I agree. And I didn't have the opportunity to see that previously, but those waivers are not necessary because they're subdivision control.
All right, well, I'm sure we'll work through all of that in fullness of time. We did just get a peer review letter from Joe Sawicka. Have you had an opportunity to review that?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I don't know. I was able to, look at it briefly today. I don't know if the other board members have had that opportunity. But to get back to your earlier point, yeah, I believe me, I am very sympathetic to your desire to move this thing along. And as I said earlier, and I mean very sincerely, so are we. We don't like these things to drag out, but I don't know what we can do tonight. Given that we just got that peer review, I would expect you'd be responding to that in writing for the record. And once again, not to harp on it, but we're missing a very important voice here tonight in the person of our chairman. So I think, and this is just one member's opinion, the other board members are free to take a different view and make what motions they think is appropriate. But I think that we are looking for at least one more continuance until we can, start moving forward to wrapping this thing up. Anyone else have any thoughts they'd like to share with us, George?
In Joe's letter, there are several points where he mentions the board ought to ask, the board ought to consider. And I think we can go through each of them, or just say that after Joe's letters come in, we ought to be able to get an answer on those. There are several issues that the board has to ask about that just won't materialize unless we do, but they appear in the letter. And I think it would be helpful if the engineer, as necessary, or the applicant or others related to the issue, can answer those ahead of time. We just make the request right now on those items that I suggested that the board ask about.
Yeah, you mean a written
Some of those
request?
are very
Would you like,
significant.
okay.
You're talking about a written request, George?
Well, they're already in
Or
writing.
did you want to go forward tonight and look at them?
We can either go forward tonight and look at them or just make a written request that the engineer and the applicant and others who may be involved be prepared to address those because they would be asked by the
I mean,
board.
normally we would expect to find a written response to those, but if it's the
Right.
will of the board, I have no problem with going through them now. But again, I would suggest a written response ought to be part of the record in any event.
Well, it should be in writing, but we can make the request to have it in writing. Because Joe says the board may want to ask about streetlights, for example. And that's a very good question. But Joe's not asking it himself, but he's suggesting that the board is the entity that would ask that question about streetlights. And all I'm saying is if that question is there, I would adopt the question and would like an answer from the applicant, not necessarily tonight, certainly, but something to think about for the next meeting or provide information to Martha for our consideration.
Okay.
If it pleases the board, Mr. Murphy, I could, believe it or not, probably go through these in 5 minutes because they are not substantive comments. They are high level when you usually would do a submittal. Literally, would you like me to 5 minutes? It's your call as
Yeah.
I defer to you as chair.
What-
But if
what's
that would
the-
address Mr. Morse's concerns, I can do it that quickly. And
All
then
right.
respond also in writing. I'm
All
not
right.
saying not to do so.
Leslie, what are your thoughts? What do you want to do?
5 minutes isn't a long period of time. I'll listen. I'd be more than happy to hear what Jill has to say.
Okay, and Woody?
We could go through them if everyone else wishes.
All right.
I haven't gotten a chance to read them. So.
And Mary?
Mary, you're muted.
I'm sorry for that, guys. If Joe can keep it short, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because, and let's say, Joe, why don't you go through them? But,
Sure.
bear in mind that we're also going to want Joe Sawetka at some point to see written responses from you, and he will comment on those written responses. That's typically the way these things work out.
100%. I can do that, no problem. It's just that I think you're going to probably want to hear them to Mr. Morris's point. So if I may, I'll begin and I can promise you, Ms. Matthews, start your time clock. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm fast, Italian talking. So
All right.
the yield plan comment on the first page, the primary septic field, he's talking about the setbacks. That's not an issue. That septic field could be set anywhere. I can meet that. That's an odd comment because that's a Board of Health comment. We usually just show a box anyway, not an
Well,
issue.
can I interrupt you for 1 second? Remember, he's talking about the yield plan now.
Exactly. That's why it's such an odd list of things. It's easy to answer because they're not I shouldn't say they're not well, they're not big deal comments. You'll see what I mean, Mr. Murphy. So with regard to then, two engineers should verify the dwelling depicted on lot 5 meets 20-foot minimum setback. Yeah, we'll show that. That's what we're supposed to do on the yield plan, and we did, and he did verify that. 4 of the 5 contiguous, we're close to 48. I mean, if we're saying on the plan it's 48, it's 48. It's a stamped plan. It doesn't have to be a surveyor. An engineer can also testify and certify with regard to areas of properties. A single stormwater infiltration basin. We have not fully designed the basins. It's a yield plan. We simply demonstrate that we can put them in. All of the soils here are all sandy. We can put them in. It's not hard to put in stormwater management systems. You can go underground, you can go on. So that's kind of a comment that's a breeze to fix. With regard to concept sketch plan, I basically said we include sidewalks. I apologize. We originally had done so, and then it was decided that that the street had become so condensed that there was no longer really a need because, first of all, it's not required. Second of all, nobody's going to use them. So they eliminated them. And you will notice that there was a waiver request by Mr. Sawyer. I apologize. There shouldn't have been. It should have just been the statement, we're not going to put them in. And then during site plan review by this board, you could have asked for them.
Can I interrupt 1 second? Can I interrupt 1 second? What about the comment regarding the sidewalks being available for public foot traffic?
They can be available for public foot traffic. We were just trying to minimize the amount of impervious area and figured people could walk down the street. There's going to be such a little amount of traffic. I mean, the sidewalks are easy to just basically put in the right of way. We were simply trying to reduce impervious areas, excuse me. So that, again, that is something, Mr. Murphy, that the board can ask for. The application for infiltration chambers, again, you know, we don't show all the storm. It's easy to put a French drain in, and you stick a basin under and you grab the overhead drains from the roofs. It's not a big deal. It's clean water. It's not gray. The plan labels 60 diameter. Yeah, it's a typo. We'll fix it. The board want the existing driveway stable depicted. On lot 48 appears the existing features will be within feet of the proposed dwelling. Again, we're going to make sure that everything meets the guidelines as far as, you know, any kind of screening on site. That's something that gets done during a site plan review, not during an OSRD approval, because it's my understanding what this board does is approve the special permit. Then at a later meeting, it's required to go in and get the plans approved, which in this case would be site plan approval because we're not going for a definitive. And then he talks about the hydraulics. Again, we don't submit the hydraulics till we complete all the grading and all of the construction elements because it's not the appropriate time. Go on to concept sketch, you know, the existing 12-inch main. We never design those 12-inch mains until we're ready to do construction. He's really thinking he's reviewing almost a, you know, subdivision level plan, and it's not yet. Pump chamber, you know, relative to the septic system, or for the, you know, I believe that's a septic system. Again, that's part of the approval with the Board of Health. It's going to be what the Board of Health requires, and we wouldn't be permitted to install unless we did meet Title V and the local regulations. The plan doesn't address streetlights. We never provide streetlights in any of Mr. DePero's subdivisions, so we hadn't intended on doing them. Again, during the site plan, the board can opt to request that. That's within your purview. You want the engineer to address if, excuse me, if there's going to be separate irrigation. There never is. This is a condominium. Nothing is separate. It's possible that the condominium will want to put in an irrigation system. We always suggest that they do so plants can live. But again, within the purview of the board to make some discretionary changes. As far as Stone's barn being relocated, we think we're going to relocate the barn, but if we have a buyer who says, I don't want the barn, we're not going to relocate the barn. The plan appears to show a 40-foot public access way. I just want to make certain, everybody keeps saying public access, and you had a prior OSRD that is going to be a definitive subdivision plan, and the person who is the party responsible said that he was going to dedicate the property to you, which means it's a public road. We are simply going to give an easement to the entire town to cross the property and access the back. So is it a public access? Nah, it's a public easement. And Attorney Winter can explain to you, it's kind of, you know, semantics, but from a legal perspective, it's an easement open to the public. The waiver, again, the waiver, I apologize, and I'm sorry, you're never going to hear the words definitive out of anybody's mouth from the team again. And you'll never hear waiver other than from, you know, section 97 or 112, nothing from subdivision control. As far as the on-site pedestrian bicycle circulation, you know, I mean, we think we do that because we provide the existing backspace. Plan requests a waiver. Again, I apologize. We don't need anything like that. How'd I do, Ms. Matthews? I'm done.
Right, you're under time. Good.
But don't forget, I had to answer questions.
I know.
Awesome. Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure, because I know Mr. Morse had that concern of like, are you going to answer them? And I just wanted to make sure. I understand that you need to see those responses in writing, and they will be put in writing, but I wanted to just go through because I always think it's nice for the board to just hear. So no more talking. I turn it back over to you, Mr. Murphy.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do have a question regarding the process. I've done quite a few of these, and typically what I've done is before getting into the details, we do the OSRD special permit.
Yep.
And many of Joe's comments are at the detail level design. So if we're fortunate enough to get a special permit, we're going to come in with the detail design drawings that show that, you know, the devil's in the details, the stormwater design, and there's a lot of money spent on that. That's why we don't bring that, do the full stormwater calculations, we need to get what kind of animal what we're looking at here before I get into the detailed design. So how, Martha, can you help me out with this? Just confirm the process. If we do get a special permit, what are we submitting next?
I think I would actually like to turn this over to Attorney Winter, because this is, typically it's the OSRD special permit is granted, and then it's an OSRD definitive subdivision plan that gets submitted. So what I'm hearing is, because this is going to be a condominium, it's a different process. And we've had condominiums before, which all went through the definitive plan process. So I'm actually a little bit confused myself.
So
that were OSRDs.
yeah, if you want me to chime in preliminarily on that, Mr. Murphy, I'm happy to.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, so my response is that I don't necessarily disagree that the next step would probably be just site plan approval, because it's not going to be a definitive subdivision application. I mean, it doesn't fit within those regulations if it's going to be one parcel as a condominium style development. So you're not going to have that second step, and that second step traditionally would be where you would see all those design details sort of developed and discussed with the board at that level. So that would happen during the site plan review process. So I also agree with Steve's comment that you don't put the cart before the horse, generally speaking. So until if you have the right to build it and what it is, what the creature looks like, you're not going to do the engineering and all the other more expensive design detail work and put it on a plan until you know what you're actually getting yourself into. So I would expect that all those details will be shown on the site plan that they would come back with. So once certain things like the water main and stuff like that, I mean, those are just engineering challenges. They're not related to the special permit decision. And to the extent you get into it on the site plan review level, it's to meet the criteria and show the the viability and things like that. But we're certainly not reviewing it on behalf of an engineering department or at that level. So all those things are going to get fleshed out at the next step. I don't know if that process is memorialized in your bylaw per se, because it's contemplated that the next step would be a definitive subdivision application. So, we may be writing a new chapter of the bylaw by doing it this way. And I don't know if you have any sort of practice or procedure or background doing it, quite this way with an OSRD that goes into a condominium form of development. But that's why it's a little bit off the script. But that's what I would contemplate would happen next.
Thank you, Brian. That's very helpful. I mean, as you know, the OSRD specifically authorizes a condominium type of development.
Yep.
And it also does specifically reference the definitive subdivision plan. So I hear what you're saying, but that makes
Thank you.
sense. Well, Steve, I mean, what I would do is just make those points in your written response.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
And we'll go from there. Let me turn to the board members now, see if there's any further discussion, and then we'll open it to the public. George, any further discussion at this point?
Nothing more, thank you.
Leslie, you are muted.
Nothing, thank you.
Woody? There you go.
Nothing at this time, no.
Mary, anything?
Nothing.
I don't have anything further, so I guess we can open it to public comment. Martha, do you see any raised hands?
Not yet, but it might take a second. Kendra Beauparlant, followed by Todd Gustafson. And Kendra.
Hi, hello. I live on 25 Worthington Street, and I just want to say that I continue to feel that the planning board continues to ignore Newbury residents and how they feel about this project. I just want to say that they changed it to condominiums like the last meeting. Like at first it was a OSRD like subdivision, now it's a condominium. How can you change that? So like, how can you change that? And also, I just don't think people realize how much traffic this is going to cause on High Road. I just feel like there's a lot of flaws that you guys aren't looking at, and you fail to recognize them. And I just feel like you're not listening to the public about this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Todd Gustafson.
Good evening. My name is Todd Gustafson. I live at 22 Rolfs Lane in Newbury, Mass. And we built our home here 28 years ago. We were subject to Mr. DePiero developing a OSRD almost 8 years ago when the Harbor School Properties was immediately adjacent to our property. And I've submitted a letter to the board as well for public review. And while I'm not going to comment specifically on the 105 property, what I thought I would share is just my experience with the OSRD project, how it's impacted how it impacted our livelihood, our family, and our situation on Rolfs Lane. As you might imagine, we were very reticent, given that there was going to be a 8-home development that was happening next to us. What would that look like? What would the construction be? How would noise, you name it. As part of the OSRD, there was open space that was going to be made available. But I had a lot of concern. Our family had a lot of concern, and our neighbors had a lot of concern. But I must tell you that that concern was alleviated. The project was done from our lens very professionally. It was well maintained. For sure, there was construction. There was tractors, and there was hammers, and there was nails, and there was noise. But what I would tell you is that the finished product, I think, was of high quality, and we're very happy with what sits next to us. Would we have liked open land? You betcha. But what I would tell you is that all things considered, we were very happy with the outcome, and I think it's a benefit to the town as well. So I just wanted to share that observation, given that I had lived as a direct abutter to a similar type of situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Catherine is physically raising her hand.
You're muted, Ms. O'Brien.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to read a letter that was written by Bonnie Simpson. She gave it to me today because she's an abutter of 105, direct abutter. And she and her husband, Chris, have written many letters. And one of the times that one of the last Zoom meetings, I don't know which one, I asked if the board had read the letters rather than just count them for and against. And I mean, you know the answer to that. It was basically no. So she wants me to read this letter.
No one ever, whoever said that we haven't read the letters?
I asked, and Peter polled you, and some of you said you had read some, but there wasn't anyone that had read all of them.
Well, I very distinctly remember saying that I had read everything that came in, and I think that was the majority of the board.
Well,
It may have been, well,
that's wonderful. I'm very
all right,
glad to hear
if,
that.
If your memory is different, then that's fine. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm very glad to hear that, though. That makes a big difference to all of us here. All right, so I'm going to get into her letter.
Mr. Murphy, it's a letter that's being
Yeah,
admitted without
I'm sorry,
testimony.
Jill, don't interrupt me. Please don't interrupt me.
I have to make a point of order to the chair.
We are
Mr.
again writing
Leonard.
a strong, we are again writing in strong opposition to the proposed subdivision. Next door at 105 High Road, we are direct abutters, and I have unique issues and concerns. It is difficult to know that our rights and concerns are being addressed. It seems that it's all about Costinuses. They don't own it anymore, but it has been, and DePiero, and what they want to do. This, as property owners, we have equal rights and responsibilities. Like most people, our home and property is the most valuable financial asset. Over the past 17 years, we have been systematically renovating and upgrading our existing homes, and they are being devaluated by new construction close to them. We have reached out to 2 different realtors, and here are their response. Number 1, any existing homes are devalued by new construction close to them. The devaluation would not be with your assessment value, which affects your tax rate. The devaluation would be when an actual buyer, what an actual buyer would pay for your home. Number 2 is the second realtor. Neither of them are me, by the way. My honest professional answer to your question is this. A construction site behind your property will make it very difficult to sell your house. Even with the upgrades, renovations, and a prime location, most potential buyers would not schedule a showing. Those that do will be looking for, quote, a great deal, end quote, something well below fair market value. So how is it that Mr. Castanes's rights supersede ours? He decides to build a subdivision netting him multi-million-dollar profits, and we take a financial loss. This isn't just about yield plans, which haven't been determined, and building codes. This is about people's lives. This is about rights and fairness. Also, I am an RN, and I work nights my entire career, and I have worked nights my entire career and sleep during the day. I'm going to be forced to quit my job because the construction noise prevents me from getting appropriate rest to safely take care of my patients. Or is it who cares? There is money to be made, so too bad. He moved next door to you. Good luck, deal with it. Is that your answer? Well, we have the responsibility to do the right thing and look out for everyone in Newbury, not just several people. And they're not just several people and their money-making agendas. Also, does Mr. Castanes have the right to put Miss O'Brien's farm, horse farm, out of business due to the subdivision? She is also a direct abutter. And I remind you that the subdivision that is strongly opposed by the most of the people who live in Newbury. She also has a right in both local and state laws to have her business. Again, how is it that Mr. Castanes seems to be entitled to more rights and considerations to do whatever he pleases, and the hell with everyone else in Newbury? We are not alone in this concept. It is a constant theme with just about everyone in town. The quote-unquote generous gift, as it is known, of open space for Newbury. That is the next thing that needs to be addressed. This is a very basic concept. At any time after moving here in 2007, Mr. Castanes could have opened up the back area of the property to the general public at that time. It is no coincidence that this generous gift is attached and conditional on the approval of the subdivision. It's the carrot to sweeten the proposal. No mystery there. It's so obvious. It was so obvious at the last Zoom meeting. The open area was increased, 2 units removed, and more parking spaces were added because they knew they were in trouble. Then there was the sales pitch that went on for over 35 minutes. It was deflection, a distraction, and your basic gaslighting. Then in capital letters, birds, butterflies, and bees, question mark. Seriously? One very astute, intelligent man compared it to a used car salesman promising free oil changes and a floor mat upgrade, desperate for the sale. And yes, we all agreed it is their right to make the presentation however they choose. We also all appreciate that our area of the North Shore is very fortunate and rich with many, many lovely outdoor areas for the public to enjoy year-round, besides this one. Our thousands going to flock to 105 High Road. That's very doubtful. Birds and butterflies are everywhere. They're already here. Many view this generous gift as a sort of a quid pro quo, maybe a subtle bribe, for lack of a better word. Not our word, but a term floating around town. One other point about the sales pitch. It was stated repeatedly and emphasized that the new units would not be visible from High Road. The structures being visible is not the issue. It's the development itself that is the issue. It's not wanted in Newbury. The opposition to this subdivision continues to be ignored by decision makers, by everyone trying to push this subdivision through. Our personal opinion of where Arthur made his mistake was his lack of research. He just never understood or appreciated all the unique things that make Newbury so fabulous and its citizens so dedicated to our town. Newbury is steeped in history from the 1600s. There are current families whose roots living here today. There is a desire to maintain the open space, the farms, the agriculture, and the peacefulness, the wildlife, the wetlands, the smells, and the rural atmosphere. Families have large yards, space, and privacy between neighbors. Newbury never wants to become another Newburyport where every inch is developed on a postage stamp. Maybe he never read the master plan of 2006. Maybe he didn't understand it, or maybe he decided it wasn't going to stop his plans. It's all very sad because this situation is causing unwanted and unnecessary serious problems, not just for the abutters, but for everyone who loves Newbury. At the Zoom meeting in March, finally, someone stated out loud and confirmed that the units are not affordable housing. We all still waited for the price of these units, and still lack of transparency continues to plague this development. We want to talk specifics. Who's going to build the houses? Is DePiero? And the facts. They want to talk about birds and butterflies. Also, there is still no discussion about an independent traffic survey that needs to be done. The dangers of this stretch of 1A should make it mandatory. We want to thank everyone who has taken the time and effort to email, contact people, communicate, and to speak up against this subdivision and for Newbury. And please remember, this is for profit for them, not individuals. Excuse me, this is for profit for individuals. It is not a profit subdivision for Newbury. We have nothing to gain except loss of what we love. Bonnie and Christopher Simpson, 107 High Road, Newbury.
Thank you. Attorney Mann, to your point about procedure, that letter came in and it's part of the public record, which is simply quoting from the public record.
Oh, it was submitted. Okay, because I did not know that. I don't recall seeing a letter of that magnitude today.
To be honest with you, I didn't remember it was that long, but I've read it. I read it earlier.
Okay, that was my point of order, is that you can't read into the record, a public person can't read into the record a letter, and it's not permissible. But if you got it and you consented, I didn't know that. It's just not appropriate.
Anyone else, Martha?
Yes, in order of hands raised, Joan Hoysrott is next. And Joan, you'll need to unmute yourself, please.
Hi, Martha. So I have a few things I wanted to say. I've been watching the progress of these plans over the past year, and I'm happy how they've progressed. I like seeing the open space I like the fact that they're setting aside land that the community can use. I like would enjoy like having a new place that we could go walk. I think that's a benefit to the whole community. And also, I'm the biggest abutter to the development going on in Cottage Road that Mark, he's not developing the houses, but he developed the land. I just wanted to say that I found him like very respectful of all my concerns that were going on at the time. Like for an example, when he was clearing the trees, there was certain trees I felt like I really didn't want to lose because they would help protect my privacy. And he was more than willing to leave the trees that I wanted there. You know, any concern I've had, he's been willing to address and work with me. And the other thing, I'd like to bring up a couple things based on what Catherine O'Brien had just said. I've talked to a couple realtors and they felt like that having new homes by mine was going to bring up my property value, not bring it down. So I don't understand how, you know, who could say that, because I know mine has gone up. And the other thing is I work from home and I was very concerned about noise, because not only do I have 2 new houses going on Cottage Road, I have a new house on the other side of me on Riverfront and 2 houses on High Road that are being remodeled. So I'm working from home and there was noise going to be going on around me all day. I was very worried about whether I'd be able to hear and get any work done. And as it turns out, I barely even notice it. I take naps during the day sometimes. There's never been once that I've been really bothered by the noise, and I have it all around me. So I don't see, you know, that is that big of a concern. They're not that noisy. Those were my comments.
All right, thank you.
Next is Peter Gonchev.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
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 Very good. Yeah, so a couple of things. One is I do thank everyone's time here in the meeting and learned an awful lot of things. But I do want to go back to kind of like the core of setting the sort of the nature of the subdivision / condominiums or whatever is being built here. And that is, do we have an approved yield plan that we can work from? Because doesn't that define kind of the number of units, which would also impact storm sewer designs and water designs and so on and so forth? So it seems to me, without having this is the number we're working to, all the other stuff about site reviews and that kind of don't make sense at this point until we know what we're dealing with. Isn't that the case, or am I wrong there?
No, you're not wrong. And we spent a lot of time on the yield plan, and the board reached a consensus some weeks back that the current version of the yield plan was acceptable.
Okay. And another question I had was related to the whole nature of the open space resources, making that available to the public and stuff like that. And then tonight I was a little disturbed when not having a public access road, but a public easement. Can easements be taken away just as easily as they can be created? And isn't that a problem? Because the whole idea of the open space was to allow for public access to open space, and not having a sidewalk, forcing people to walk down the road. I mean, this is all, it's not very safe. I don't care if there's a couple of cars a day type of thing, but it's just not safe to have. I don't think anyway, it's not having sidewalks when you're trying to encourage public access to certain parts of the town. And that's what I do. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. To answer your question, the whole idea is the permanent preservation of open space, as well as the permanent guaranteed access to the public. As far as the sidewalks go, your point is well taken, and I think that's a point for further discussion.
But what about the nature of an easement, like to grant a public easement to the town of Newbury? But can an easement be taken away just as quickly?
I'm going to say no, but if Brian Winter, our town council, wants to weigh in on that at all.
No, an easement is a permanent interest in land. Once granted, it gets recorded and it quote unquote burdens the land. So it's going to run with the land in perpetuity. It's not like a license. Maybe you're thinking of a license that can be revoked at any time. But once that easement is granted and accepted by the town, it's going to run with the land in perpetuity.
Okay. Then another thing I was looking at is Catherine put out or painted some lines showing her easement on the land. How's that going to impact the proposals? Because it's pretty significant when you look at it. It sort of takes out the whole road that's running along her fence.
Do you want me to, Mr.
Well, I was
Murphy?
just wondering,
Yeah, Attorney Mann, why don't you address that?
Yeah.
That's a private aspect, a private easement, and I'm not going to go into it, but the roadway does not actually traverse it, but we have the right to. There's nothing to prohibit us. We just don't have the right to use the portion that is on Ms. O'Brien's side. So again, I would reiterate that this is a private matter between two parties. Has absolutely nothing to do with the board, and that easement is 7 feet. And it doesn't really impact Mr. Gotcha, but it's a good question. I mean,
but it might impact the layout, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
It would impact where a home would be situated, but it's 7 feet from the property line, and homes have to be 20 feet. So there is absolutely no impact.
Yeah. Okay. And then I want to sort of echo what Kendra said earlier about, there's a lot of moving parts in terms of the goals of the OSRD and the goals of the development. So I'm a little, just sort of, I feel uncomfortable that we're just throwing stuff in that just sounds good. But like, for example, there was this question about, for the snowmobile trails. But I got to tell you, snowmobile trails in summertime become dirt bike trails. And I'm not sure we want to have dirt bikes going around that backyard or that back area as a comment. So there's some things I think, to Kendra's point, have not been thought through, or not kind of hearing what the town of Newbury wants. So I just want to make that comment as well. And the other question I had is, who is the OSRD granted? Is it granted to like DePiro LLC or to the landowners?
May I, Mr. Murphy?
Yeah.
So the conservation easement it's subject to board review. The best method typically is to allow the condominium to retain the fee interest, but it's in the town's discretion to change that. But to have the condominium holds the fee interest, the title, and that the reason for that is so they maintain all legal liability relative to it and the maintenance obligations. And then that the conservation restriction, which is essentially a control mechanism, and that is typically granted to the conservation commissions in a particular town. And those documents are called the conservation restriction, approved by the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, Energy and Environmental Affairs. And they are very standard and strictly applied. So basically, if a CR is approved, for the most part, they only permit passive recreation. And those are things that are negotiated by and between the Board of Selectmen, the Conservation Commission, and this planning board.
Okay. My last question is, how many units and how many living units are we talking about now?
10 units, nine new, one of the existing home.
Okay. And they're not detached. They're like 9.
They are detached. They are 9
Okay.
single family homes.
Okay.
And then the 10th is the existing single family home. Yes.
Okay.
Can I just, I want to take a minute and maybe if we can put this in perspective, it might help you to understand a little better what's going on, because these are, issues can be extremely confusing.
I'll say.
Yeah. And, you got to start with the idea that people have the right to subdivide their land. We hear a lot of calls from folks saying, well, you should not allow any building on this property whatsoever because the town doesn't want it. Well, I don't know that any one person or small group of people can speak for the whole town. But the point is that really is a misconception of the authority that the board has. We don't have the right to tell the Costoneses or Mr. DePiro or anyone else that they cannot develop their property. But the rules for developing and subdividing property are in the subdivision control law, which is a series of a group of state statutes. And you've probably heard, if you've been following proceedings, the term definitive subdivision plan or, conventional subdivision plan. And you've probably even heard the term as of right plan, which is referring to the same thing. And what that means basically is if you comply with all of the requirements of the subdivision control law, then you're entitled to an approval. And the purpose of the subdivision control law is not to prohibit subdivisions. The purpose is to make sure that any newly created lots have adequate, comply with zoning, that they have adequate utilities and infrastructure, and that any new roads provide adequate access. Okay, and in that respect, you know, they can be thought of as of right. I mean, that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but the point is the board does not have just this general authority to say, no, Mr. DePiero, you can't subdivide this property. Now, an OSRD, or open space residential development, is an alternative to a definitive subdivision plan. And it's a form of special permit, and like all special permits, the special permit granting authority, in this case, the planning board, has a lot more discretion. But the whole idea of a OSRD is that there are trade-offs. Okay, the developer, there are advantages to the developer who can keep the development in a more compact, if you will. I don't know, I'm not phrasing this very well, but they can, you know, confine the development to one portion of a larger parcel. And in exchange for that, what the community gets is the permanent preservation of the balance of the parcel as open space, so it can never be built on again. And that's the trade-off, okay? And that's what we've been wrestling with all this time. These proceedings have never been about, can something be developed on this property? They've always been about what can be developed on this property. And now we've gotten to the point that in the current version of the plan, the applicant and owners are offering to put permanent open space, passive recreation only restrictions on about 12.5 acres of this property. Town may never have the opportunity to get that again, you know, to protect that property in that way. If we turn down the OSRD, it doesn't mean that this is done, it's over. It simply means that they can come forward with a definitive subdivision plan in which the board has far less discretion. So having said that, Brian, is there anything you would add or correct or?
No, I don't think I could have
Just
said it
said.
better myself. I think that's a great summary. I mean, I just suppose that I'd supplement it a little bit, just saying that, you know, zoning bylaws always cut both ways. I mean, town meeting decides, not this board, town meeting. And the zoning bylaw not only restricts land, but it grants rights. So what's before the board to, you know, in this public hearing process is a special permit. That's the only thing at the end of the day the board can act on. So if it's granted, it grants certain rights. If it's denied, that doesn't mean that the land is going anywhere, the owner's going anywhere, or their development plans are going anywhere. It just means they don't have a special permit. So they, you know, that's the thing about land use. The land doesn't go anywhere. So someone will have another idea for how to develop this land. I'm most certain of it. And those rights are not something that this board necessarily establishes. So the board has to consider what's in front of it, all the public comments that have been, you know, provided, all the information from the applicant, the entire record, as we like to say, and then decide if the special permit application in front of them is something that's appropriate to grant within the scope of their jurisdiction and the confines of their decision or not. And that's really it. So it's easy for that conversation to slip into a larger one. But you know, in its simplest form, that's really all that's in front of the board. So I don't know if that helped or hurt, Larry, but
No, well, let me also add too, that both our open space plan and the town's master plan both specifically endorse the use of an OSRD over a definitive subdivision plan. In fact, there's a provision in our zoning bylaw that says anyone who's planning a subdivision of 4 or more lots must first apply for an OSRD. So that's the town's policy because of the unique opportunity that this gives us to preserve open space. But there's not often, you know, a bright line, you know, for making that determination. The board has to weigh all of these factors, and that's what we've been struggling with for quite some time on this project. So that's my sermon for the
Oh, thank you. A lot of balancing.
Anyone else, Martha?
Yeah, Mark DePiero had his hand up next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So again, I appreciate the time tonight. I just wanted to wrap up, making a comment that, we have close to 82% of this property with public use, including the roadway walking down where any of the public can go down and get out into the 6-car parking area. So that leaves, it's 77% open space, and it's about 5% road, roughly, and I'm rounding down the numbers right now. So we're looking at 18% of the property in private for the homes, which if you took 10 homes and divided it into 18%, each person has 1.8% of that 16.5 acres. So I really, months ago, I made a decision to give as much as I could one more time, and that's what we have here today. So concerning the abutters to the left, as we look in, Catherine O'Brien, I still hear information that she'd like to sell me the property behind the scenes. Because we have posted the first, and to the right of us, we have somebody that has a 30-yard construction dumpster, and it's a full-blown construction site. The one that was complaining, it's actually a dumpster, I think, that the tannery owns, and they use it as a sub-site. So, we can sit here for months and take little hits, but we want to come back at these things here and really talk the truth. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Chuck Colby.
Yes, how you doing? Chuck Colby, Colby Farms, 131 High Road. We're a direct abutter also to the right of the Costonas property. Myself and my family is strongly against that. I just want to get that on record. It really annoyed a lot of us after that last meeting, listening to all the people talking about the open space and the access to the Great Marsh, which there is no access to the Great Marsh from the Costonas property. We have 170 acres that go out and around there, goes all out of the marshland. Mrs. O'Brien owns on the other side. Spencer Pierce owns on the end, which I've been told that they are not allowing access down there as well. And it's all wetlands down at the end of the Costonas property. So the big sales pitch I heard at the last Zoom meeting was open space, open space. You can go kayaking, you can do this and that on the Great Marsh. And that's all false statements. I just want to get that on record. I'm reading articles in the Daily News after the last Zoom meeting of how great this is going to be for Newbury, creating all this open space. And it's really not. They have access to Mr. Costonas's piece of woods in the back, which majority of it is wetlands. There's no trails down there right now. The trails that they've been talking about are trails on my family's property, which I've gone through, and it's now posted no trespassing along the property line. They're not welcome to come onto our side of the property. And whenever there's a construction construction site going on near one of our hay fields, it always causes drainage issues. I know they say everything's going to be taken care of, but water always comes into the hay fields, causes problems for us, and it's a loss for us in our field. So that's a wet area down towards the bottom where they're talking about putting the soccer fields, and that gets raised up at all. Water's going to come over to our side of the property, and it's just going to be more of a loss on our hay field there. So I just want to get this on record that the Colby family is against this property. And thank you.
Thank you.
Mark DePiero has raised his hand again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Colby's correct. We're self-contained on our 16.5 acres. At one time, Historic New England was happy about the whole connection, but didn't want to support it either way. So in this case, we are self-contained. We're not advertising that we're going out hunting and, going in kayaks and everything else. We are self-contained within the 16.5 acres. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine O'Brien is raising her hand physically.
You're muted, Ms. O'Brien. Ms. O'Brien, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Unmute. Okay. Well, thank you. One of these days I'll get the hang of that unmuting thing. Anyway, I would like to answer a couple of questions that other people have brought up. And I am very grateful that Mr. Colby was on the line, because I have something that I was going to mention about the marsh, but he did a fabulous job. So I'm just going to tell you a couple of things. One of the people that was on the public hearing, a woman named Mary, she asked a question of whether the area, I don't know, behind the houses would need fill or whatever for the septic. And I just wanted to let her know that last summer they started bringing in used fill, and they're continuing to bring in used fill. I don't believe it's clean fill because it has a lot of concrete and rebar and all that stuff in it. So they have already started doing that, just to let you know. They have a lot of it down there. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but it's there. So okay, so I wanted to talk about the presentation that Steve made last month, and then he did again this month. Pretty similar.
Ms. O'Brien,
presentation.
is this any new information?
Yeah. Oh, this is all new. I've never mentioned this before.
Well,
Okay. I appreciate the time to tell you something you don't know. Are you ready?
all right, but please be concise.
Yeah, I will be. Okay. I'm not going to address each of the points that Steve made, but I'm going to address a few things that I want to clarify. He showed us some lovely ground pictures, and he said that the ground was not wet and that there was plenty of room between the trees to make trails. And I would like to just let him know that he took those pictures in the winter. Things are different in the summer and in the spring. The trees grow leaves. The brambles come out all over the place, so you can't get by. They grab your pant legs, and then the bushes grow. So those pictures were interesting, but not really appropriate. So I want to let him know that. The other thing I wanted to let him know was that he has pictures of both the Colby's property and my property that he used as examples, and that is trespassing. And I'm going to think seriously about what I do about that, because trespassing is not allowed on my property because I have it posted.
Ms. O'Brien, can you please get to the point? What does this have to do with any of the issues before the board?
It has to do with the consistency of the land, and it has to do with the fact okay, so the issue has been safety. It has been mentioned several times. Most of them are talking about 1A, which is very dangerous. I'm talking about the safety of the 10 acres. Forest is home to many wild animals. They have lived there for a very long time, and you want to take their homes away. I would suggest a large number of coyotes will not take that lightly. I did have a call to the Board of Health once this year because the Castinos were throwing their garbage in the backyard, and the coyotes loved it. They came right up, almost to his back step, to get the free meal. So I want people to know that there is a separate safety issue with that quote unquote open land. It's not open. The coyotes live out there. And they walk right up off his driveway to go across the street into tender crop when they can hunt bunnies and moles and rats and things like that. So you can hear them at night. I mean, they howl at night and they keep me awake sometimes. They're so close. So I want to make it clear that if you're inviting people to go into that backwoods, I would suggest that you don't take on that project. You don't take on the ownership of that lot, that the town not take on the ownership, because these coyotes go after small dogs and cats in this area. And right up the road a short time ago, you may be aware well of it, but it took out the Parker's golden retriever, and the golden retriever was right up by the door. Additionally, there are many birds here. We have Arthur actually pointed out a white owl to me that was in the trees right between our land. So what you're going to do by this is you're going to send all of those animals away. They're all going to disappear with the construction. Maybe not the coyotes, but the birds are all going to have to be relocated. So the fact that they're saying, and this again is just mirrors, smoke and mirrors, they're going to plant a meadow to help the birds enjoy the meadow. There are more birds around here than you could possibly shake a stick at, but they live in that 10-acre parcel, and they live in the other area of my home, which is still wooded. So the other thing that I really want to make sure you understand, you will be inviting people to come in here. That's what you said. You want to make it as inviting as possible, and you want to make sure that everyone is welcome. Well, I want to say whoever owns the property and invites people over there onto it, they better have good insurance, because anybody in this area knows there's Lyme tick from the ticks in that forest, and they're plentiful. There is equine encephalitis, which affects people, and that's carried by the thousands and thousands of mosquitoes that live in that wetland. There are midges, there are all sorts
So
of
Brian,
things.
really, I mean, we're very far afield here. I mean, can you just?
You're trying to tell me that you're inviting people to that area, and I'm telling you why they're going to be disappointed, why they shouldn't be in there.
Then they don't have to go.
Okay.
I mean,
No, I understand you very clearly.
all right. Can you please sum up?
No, I'm done. You're not listening anyway.
All right, thank you.
Mark DePiero has his hand up again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 As far as destruction of the property in the area, there were 3.5 acres or so, and there were wetlands, and they were cut down in 2003. And it's an outstanding order on Catherine's property that she's never dealt with. That's destruction of property. And it's still an open order, and we are dealing with the Conservation Committee. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
All right. Martha, do you see anybody else?
No, I don't.
All right, let's go back to the board, and then hopefully we can begin to wrap this up. George, any comments or?
Yeah, I keep hearing reference to the master plan as being so important. It isn't, but it's not law, for one thing. As far as the laws that do permit development on land in this town, that's the matter of the townspeople and the town meeting, and they've made it into law that you can do things within the proper limits in this town for development of land. So for people who go around to say that you can't do this, you can't do that, it makes it very difficult when you come up head to head with a law that's in place. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Leslie, anything you want to add?
No, there's really nothing that I can add to that. I think George kind of summed it up very well.
Okay, Woody, any further comments or questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you, Larry.
And Mary.
No, just thanks to George, because that was very interesting and pertinent. Thank you.
I agree 100%. Thank you, George. Well, I guess we're looking at another date at this point. Martha, anything else?
No, I don't think so. So I'll pull up the schedule.
Well, I'd be reluctant to put another public hearing on the 5th. So
Yep.
I think we're looking at May 19th.
Yep.
I guess our position is it's just been so long, and I don't know what additional materials or matters would really end up being discussed. Because what we really are seeking is to simply close the hearing and to direct somebody to give Martha the go-ahead to do a decision. I feel the board's pain, and I understand tonight was difficult because you didn't have the full complement. It's just that this, as the board knows, for us and for you, has been a very long process. And if it is at all possible to do this on the 5th, we would much prefer to do that. We've delivered everything we possibly can. There will be no changes whatsoever at all. We have nothing more to give you other than those responses to Mr. Sawatka, which will take me and Steve all of 10 minutes to prepare, write, and send in. So I guess what we are asking is for the board's indulgence to be able to be heard at the May 5th meeting to simply wrap up at least the OSRD portion, because we still need to return to the board to provide, if the board should so choose to grant the special permit, we would still need to return to do the site plan, which is where a lot of the more detailed review will occur.
I'm sympathetic and to that, but I just, in fairness to everyone, we want to give everyone enough time to be fully heard. And I'm afraid well, I don't know.
I mean, we do believe that we've presented everything, though. I will tell you, we're not going to have any more presentations. I don't think there's anything.
I understand. I just want to give this this project has the hearings on this project have not been brief.
No.
There's no reason to believe they will be in the future. I mean, does anyone on the board have any different thoughts about that?
This takes up the full 45 minutes.
Oh, easily. And I think this is going to take up more. I mean, it's ultimately up to the board as a whole, but my recommendation would be May 19th.
Right.
I mean, you're
I'll make a motion that we continue this public hearing for May 19th at 7:15.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, George?
No discussion.
Any discussion, Leslie?
No.
Any discussion, Woody?
No.
And Mary, your thoughts?
Nope.
All right. I have nothing to add. So on the motion, George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Woody?
Yes.
And Mary, I gather you concur?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it's unanimous. We'll continue it to that date. And we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I appreciate your, don't take this the wrong way, but we won't miss seeing you every month. Any more than you will miss seeing us, I'm sure.
My goal is May 19th. That's it. We come back after
there,
that.
okay?
We're not.
We're getting there.
I can
All right.
promise you, May 19th is the drop dead. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Well, any new business? Martha, any new business?
No, no, no new
You owe me a
business.
nickel, by the way.
You had a great smile.
Oops,
No, no, you can't.
I'm sorry.
that was,
I didn't hear.
that was Mr. DePiero.
Oh, okay. Old business? No.
No old business.
Planning director's report?
I have nothing tonight.
No. How about liaison reports? Select board?
I have to tell you, I misplaced them because we were on baby watch last Tuesday night, waiting for news from our daughter for delivery. So,
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yep.
Oh, Leslie, the dog ate it.
The dog ate your homework, right?
Yeah. we have a new baby
The
girl.
baby ate it.
Wonderful, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Eating baby.
Zoning Board of
Except for last
Appeals.
night, I could talk about last night if you want to hear. They did grant Sunset a special night to discuss the liquor license and some of the concerns that they had for what, as far as like outdoor activity and some of the lighting and things like that. And the select board did go on a site walk, which they had requested. So to become a little bit more familiarized with that corner. But the week before that, it's a blank.
All right, thank you. Nothing for the zoning board. Their regular meeting was last week, but they had to cancel it because of problems with the newspaper. They didn't get the newspaper didn't get the legal notices published, so there was no meeting. Conservation Commission is on vacation, so, well, our liaison is anyway. Anything from MVPC, Martha, you want to add?
No, there was a commissioners meeting last week, but there was really nothing of particular interest to the board. Discussion about the transportation projects for the next 5 federal fiscal years. There will be a planning directors meeting. I think it may be tomorrow. So there may be something to report out of that.
Okay. I see on the agenda meeting minutes, but I don't think we've seen those, have we?
Yeah, no, they didn't make it to you, so.
All right. Anybody, anything to add? Then
You're looking for a motion to adjourn?
I am, George.
Okay.
Would you be kind enough to make it?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion from anyone? And hearing none, George, how do you vote?
None.
You vote no? Oh, no. How do you vote on the motion?
I thought no discussion. Vote yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Woody?
Yes, and thank you, Larry.
Thank you. And
Yeah, great job,
Mary?
Larry.
Yes, Larry, thank you so much. And Martha, thank you.
And I vote yes. We're done here. Thank you for an
Yay.
interesting meeting, everyone. And I'll be
Very-
glad when Pete's back.
Nice job, Larry. Thank you.
Yeah, great
Thank
job.
See you guys.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Thank you.